When billionaire Blake Carrington's buried scandal resurfaces, the woman hired to fix his brand becomes the one who forces him to face the truth about beauty, love, and himself. Will redemption cost him everything, or give him more than he ever dreamed? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown San Francisco as Blake Carrington adjusted his custom-tailored suit in the mirror of his penthouse office. At 32, he had everything most people only dreamed of: billions in the bank, a fashion tech empire called Nouveau Mode that was changing the industry, and a dating history filled with the most beautiful models in the world. "Mr. Carrington, your 9 o'clock is here," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Blake checked his Rolex. "Who is it again?" "Kendall James, the consultant for the size-inclusive line." He frowned slightly. The size-inclusive expansion wasn't his idea. It was his marketing team's desperate attempt to fix their image problem after last quarter's disastrous sales numbers. Fashion was about aspiration, about selling a dream. And in Blake's mind, that dream had always been thin, polished, and white adjacent. "Send her in," he said, expecting another boring meeting with some corporate diversity consultant. The door opened, and Blake's mouth went dry. Kendall James walked in with a confidence that immediately changed the energy of the room. She was full-figured with curves that her stylish red dress celebrated rather than hid. Her cocoa brown skin glowed, and her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. At 28, she carried herself with the assurance of someone who knew exactly who she was. "Mr. Carrington," she said, extending her hand. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." Blake shook her hand, momentarily speechless. Not because she was beautiful, though she undeniably was, but because she made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't explain. "Ms. James," he finally managed. "Welcome to Nouveau Mode." Kendall's smile was professional but distant. "Thank you for bringing me on board for this project. I've been following your company since its launch. Your tech innovations in fashion are impressive, even if your size range isn't." Blake winced at the direct criticism. "That's why you're here, isn't it? To help us expand." "To help you correct," she said, meeting his eyes directly. Something about the way she said it made Blake feel like she knew something he didn't. He gestured to the sitting area where his design team was already waiting with tablets and sample fabrics. "Don't worry, Mr. Carrington," Kendall said quietly as they walked over. "I'm not here to be your preference. I'm here to be your correction." Blake stopped walking. Those words hit him like a bucket of ice water. Could she know? No, it was impossible. That recording had been buried years ago. 3 years earlier, at a private industry party in his penthouse, Blake had been drinking with some investors when one of them mentioned expanding into the plus-size market. Blake, 3 martinis in, had laughed and said something he thought was just between friends. "Curvy black women? Not my type. The look doesn't sell. They're loud, high maintenance, and impossible to brand." What he didn't know was that someone had recorded the conversation. His PR team had paid a small fortune to bury it, and he thought the issue was dead. Until now, the design meeting was tense from the start. Kendall had strong opinions about everything, from the fabrics to the marketing approach. She challenged every assumption Blake's team made about what plus-size women wanted. "No, they don't all want to hide their bodies," she said firmly. "Many women want clothes that celebrate their curves, not disguise them." Blake found himself watching her more than participating. The way she spoke with her hands. The way she didn't shrink herself to make others comfortable. The way she owned the room. "I think we should feature real women in the campaign," Kendall continued. "Not just size 14 models who are hourglass-shaped with flat stomachs. Real diversity in bodies, skin tones, and ages." "That's not what Nouveau Mode is about," Blake finally interrupted. "We sell aspiration, not reality." Kendall looked at him directly. "And you don't think women aspire to see themselves represented? To feel beautiful in their own skin? Our customers want to see what they could be, not what they are." "Your current customers, maybe," Kendall countered. "But you're missing out on a billion-dollar market of women who are tired of being ignored by luxury brands." By the end of the meeting, Blake's design team looked exhausted. Kendall had challenged everything about their approach, and most frustrating to Blake, she had made sense. But accepting her vision meant rejecting everything he'd built his brand on. "We'll consider your suggestions," he said coldly as the meeting wrapped up. Kendall gathered her materials. "Consider them carefully, Mr. Carrington, because your competition already is. Authenticity is the new luxury." When she left, Blake loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. Why did she rattle him so much? He'd worked with beautiful women his entire career, but none of them made him feel seen, judged, almost as if she could look right through his polished exterior to the insecure boy from Oakland who had reinvented himself as Blake Carrington, fashion mogul. He picked up his phone and called his head of research. "I want everything you can find on Kendall James. Background, social media, previous work. Everything." That night, Blake couldn't sleep. He found himself scrolling through Kendall's Instagram account. Unlike the influencers he usually worked with, her photos weren't heavily filtered. They showed her working in her design studio, laughing with friends, modeling her own creations. In every image, she radiated joy and confidence. He stopped at a post from 2 years ago. It was a screenshot of a news headline: "Fashion CEOs disparaging comments about plus-size black women leaked." The caption read, "Remember who they are when they think no one is listening." #say that again. Blake's stomach dropped. She knew. She had always known. The next morning, Blake arrived at the office earlier than usual. He had spent most of the night thinking about Kendall and that post. Why would she agree to work with him if she knew what he'd said? Was this some kind of revenge plan? His assistant interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Carrington, your ex is here to see you." "Which one?" Blake asked, only half joking. "Vanessa Miller." Blake sighed. Vanessa was a model he dated for 6 months before ending things when she started hinting about marriage. "Send her in." Vanessa glided into the office, her sample-size frame draped in designer clothes. She was exactly the type of woman Blake usually dated: thin, racially ambiguous, and perfectly filtered for social media. "Blake, darling," she said, air-kissing his cheek. "You haven't been returning my calls." "I've been busy, Vanessa. The new collection is launching soon." She pouted. "Too busy for me? I heard you're working on some plus-size line now. Slumming it with the big girls?" Blake frowned. "It's a business decision. The market is changing." "Is it?" Vanessa raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Where are you? I saw your new consultant leaving yesterday. Not your usual type." "She's a professional we hired for her expertise," Blake said stiffly. Vanessa laughed. "Of course. Well, I just wanted to remind you about the charity gala next week. You promised to be my date months ago." Blake had forgotten completely. "I'll have my assistant check my schedule." After Vanessa left, Blake sat at his desk feeling unsettled. For the first time, her beauty had left him cold. There was something calculated about it, something that felt manufactured compared to Kendall's natural confidence. The thought startled him. Was he actually comparing Vanessa to Kendall? They couldn't be more different. Kendall was everything he claimed to avoid: curvy, outspoken, unapologetically black. Yet he couldn't stop thinking about her. Later that day, Blake found himself walking to the temporary office they'd set up for Kendall. He told himself it was just to check on her progress, but deep down, he knew he just wanted to see her again. He stopped at the doorway, watching as Kendall worked with a fit model who was trying on a prototype dress. The model was a size 18 with dark skin and natural hair. "Turn around," Kendall was saying. "How does it feel across your back?" "It's perfect," the model said, twirling. "Usually dresses pull here, but this fits beautifully." "That's because we're designing for your body, not despite it," Kendall explained. "The darts are placed to celebrate your curves, not hide them." The joy on both women's faces as they examined the dress made Blake feel like an intruder. He had never seen that kind of genuine excitement in his regular fittings with size 0 models. Kendall looked up and saw him. "Mr. Carrington, come and check on your investment." Blake stepped into the room. "I was curious about your progress." "We're making some, no thanks to your team's resistance." She dismissed the model, who took the dress to change. Once they were alone, Blake decided to address the elephant in the room. "I saw your Instagram post. From 2 years ago." Kendall's expression didn't change. "Which one?" "I post a lot." "You know which one?" "The screenshot about comments I allegedly made." "Allegedly?" Kendall raised an eyebrow. "We both know you said it, Mr. Carrington." Blake felt his face flush. That was taken out of context. What's the right context for saying black women are loud, high maintenance, and impossible to brand? Her voice was calm, but her eyes flashed with anger. I was drinking. It was a private conversation. And that makes it better? Kendall shook her head. Those private thoughts are what shape your public company. Look around. How many plus-size women work here? How many black women are in leadership positions? Blake had no answer. The truth was, Nouveau Mode staff looked exactly like the models they used: thin, white, or light-skinned, and conventionally attractive. If you knew how I felt, why did you agree to work with me? He finally asked. Kendall gathered her sketches. Because I'm not here for you, Mr. Carrington. I'm here for the women who've been ignored by the fashion industry for decades. Women who deserve beautiful clothes designed with their bodies in mind. If I have to work with someone who despises us to make that happen, so be it. Her words hit Blake like a physical blow. I don't despise you. No. Kendall looked him up and down. Your words, your company, your dating history, everything says otherwise. She walked past him to leave, but Blake caught her arm gently. The moment his fingers touched her skin, an electric current seemed to pass between them. Kendall felt it too. He could see it in the sudden widening of her eyes. I want to do better, he said quietly. I want this line to succeed. Kendall gently removed his hand. Then get out of my way and let me do my job. After she left, Blake stood alone in the office, surrounded by sketches of beautiful clothes for bodies he'd spent his career ignoring. Bodies like Kendall's. For the first time, he wondered if he'd built his entire empire on a lie about what beauty really was. That night, Blake canceled his dinner with a potential investor and went home early. He couldn't stop thinking about Kendall. Not just her beauty, but her conviction. The way she refused to apologize for taking up space in a world that told women like her to shrink themselves. His phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Miss you, baby. Want company tonight? Face-blowing kiss. Before Kendall, he would have said yes without hesitation. Now the thought left him cold. Instead, he found himself doing something he'd never done before, researching body positivity and racial diversity in fashion. He read articles, watched documentaries, and scrolled through the social media accounts of plus-size influencers. The joy and confidence these women exuded challenged everything he thought he knew about beauty. As dawn broke over San Francisco, Blake made a decision. It was time for Nouveau Mode to change. It was time for him to change. But when he arrived at the office that morning, his plan was immediately derailed. We have a problem, his PR director said, rushing into his office. That old recording, the one about curvy black women, it's resurfaced. It's all over social media, and they're linking it to our new size-inclusive line. They're calling it performative and hypocritical. Blake felt the blood drain from his face. How did this happen? We don't know. But it's bad, Blake. Really bad. Blake's phone rang. It was Kendall. With a sinking feeling, he answered. Did you know about this? She demanded without preamble. No, he said honestly. I just found out. My face is being dragged all over the internet, she said, her voice tight with anger. They're calling me a diversity prop, a pity hire. Do you know what that feels like? Kendall, I'm sorry. I'll fix this. How? You can't take back what you said. Blake closed his eyes. No, but I can own it. And I can change. Please don't quit. Come to the office. We'll figure this out together. There was a long silence. I'll be there in an hour, she finally said. But I'm not making any promises. After hanging up, Blake called an emergency meeting with his executive team. I need to make a public statement, he told them. We've drafted one already, his PR director said, handing him a tablet. It distances you from the comments, suggests they were edited or taken out of context. Blake read the statement and shook his head. No, that's not what I want to say. Blake, be reasonable, his CFO urged. Our stock is already dropping. We need to minimize the damage. By lying, Blake stood up. No, I said those things. They were wrong and hurtful. I need to own that. This isn't the time for a confession, his PR director argued. Think about the company. I am thinking about the company, Blake insisted. Nouveau Mode needs to change. I need to change. Just then, the door opened, and Kendall walked in. The room fell silent. She looked tired but determined, dressed in a flowing yellow dress that brightened the sterile conference room. "Ms. James," Blake's CFO said stiffly, "we're in the middle of a sensitive discussion." "About me, I assume," Kendall replied, "since my face is being plastered across the internet alongside Mr. Carrington's charming opinions." Blake dismissed his team. "Give us the room, please." When they were alone, Blake and Kendall stared at each other across the conference table. "They want me to deny it," Blake said, "to claim the recording was doctored." "And what do you want?" Kendall asked. Blake had never been more certain of anything in his life. "I want to tell the truth. I want to do better. And I want you to help me." "Why should I? After what you said about women like me." Blake took a deep breath. "Because I was wrong. About everything. And because when you walked into my office that first day, something changed. I can't stop thinking about you, Kendall. Not just your beauty, but your confidence, your vision, your refusal to shrink yourself." Kendall's expression softened slightly, but she remained cautious. "Are you saying this because you mean it, or because your company is in crisis?" "Both," Blake admitted honestly. "But mostly because meeting you made me question everything I thought I knew about beauty and desire." He moved around the table until he was standing in front of her. "I've spent my life chasing a narrow ideal that I was told was beautiful. But you're the most beautiful woman I've ever met, and you break every rule I thought I had." Kendall looked up at him, searching his face for sincerity. "Pretty words, Blake, but actions matter more than words." "You're right," he agreed. "So let me act. There's a press conference in an hour about the new line. Come with me." "And say what?" "Nothing," Blake said. "Just be there. Let me handle the rest." 1 hour later, Blake stood before a room packed with journalists and cameras. Kendall sat in the front row, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism on her face. "Thank you all for coming," Blake began. "I called this press conference to address the recording that's been circulating online. 3 years ago, I said that curvy black women were not my type, that they were loud, high maintenance, and impossible to brand." A murmur ran through the crowd. Blake continued, his eyes finding Kendall's. "I'm not here to deny those words or make excuses. I said them. They were wrong, hurtful, and came from a place of ignorance and privilege. I've spent my career promoting a narrow vision of beauty that excluded millions of women." He paused, gathering his courage. "I built this company around the lie that beauty had to be controlled. Thin, quiet, white. But Kendall James walked into my office and showed me what beauty really is: presence, power, joy that doesn't need permission." Blake turned fully toward Kendall now, speaking directly to her. "I didn't know how to love a woman like you because I never believed I was worthy of one." The room fell completely silent. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically. But Blake only saw Kendall, whose eyes had filled with tears. Without another word, she stood up and walked out of the room. Blake let her go. He knew he had said what needed to be said, but whether she believed him was up to her now. As reporters shouted questions, Blake held up his hand. "Nouveau Mode is changing starting today. Our new size-inclusive line will be the main focus of our company moving forward, not a side project. We'll be hiring designers, models, and executives who represent the full spectrum of beauty. And we'll be transparent about our progress." After the press conference, Blake returned to his office, emotionally drained. He had no idea if his confession would save his company or ruin it. But for the first time in years, he felt authentic. His phone buzzed with notifications from social media. The hashtag say that again was trending, with thousands of women sharing their stories of being excluded from fashion. Some praised his honesty, others remained skeptical. But the message he was waiting for didn't come. Kendall was gone. 3 days had passed since Blake's confession at the press conference, and Kendall hadn't returned his calls. Nouveau Mode was in chaos. Some board members threatened to resign, while social media was divided between those praising Blake's honesty and those calling it a publicity stunt. Blake sat alone in his penthouse, watching the rain hit the floor-to-ceiling windows. His phone rang again, Vanessa for the 5th time that day. He ignored it. The only call he wanted was from Kendall. Across town, Kendall sat in her mother's cozy living room, a mug of tea warming her hands. Diana James, a respected therapist known for her work in body positivity, studied her daughter's troubled expression. "You haven't said a word about what happened at that press conference," Diana said gently. "It's all over the news, baby." Kendall sighed. "I don't know what to say, Mom. I never expected him to do that. To publicly admit he was wrong?" Diana asked. To imply that he... Kendall couldn't finish the sentence. Diana reached over and took her daughter's hand. "That he has feelings for you. It doesn't make sense," Kendall said, setting down her mug. "Men like Blake Carrington don't fall for women like me. We're not in their world." "And what world is that?" "The world where women are decorations, accessories, status symbols." Kendall stood up and paced the room. "Mom, you've seen his ex-girlfriends. They're all the same, thin, light-skinned, Instagram perfect. I'm none of those things." Diana smiled knowingly. "And that bothers you because..." Kendall threw up her hands. "Because what if this is just some twisted way to prove he's evolved? What if I'm just his diversity experiment? Is that what you really think?" Diana asked. "Or are you scared because for once, a man is seeing you exactly as you are and still wanting you?" Kendall fell silent. Her mother had always been able to see through her defenses. "Baby," Diana continued, "I've spent my career helping women love their bodies in a world that tells them not to. And the hardest part isn't fighting society. It's fighting that voice inside that says we don't deserve to be desired openly and honestly." "But how do I know if he's sincere?" Kendall whispered. "You don't," Diana said simply. "That's the risk we all take with love. But don't reject the possibility just because it doesn't fit the story you've been telling yourself about what men like him want." Kendall's phone buzzed with a text. It was from her assistant. "Have you seen this?" Attached was a link to a business news article. The headline made Kendall gasp. "Novomodso steps down from daily operations. TO, focus on new direction." "What is he doing?" she murmured, quickly reading the article. According to the story, Blake had appointed his COO to handle day-to-day operations while he personally oversaw the development of a new size-inclusive line. The article quoted him saying, "This isn't just a business decision, it's a personal one. I want to be directly involved in reshaping what Nouveau Mode stands for." Diana read over her shoulder. "Well," she said with a small smile, "that certainly looks like more than words." The next morning, Kendall stood outside the Nouveau Mode offices, gathering her courage. After a sleepless night, she had decided to return to work, not for Blake, but for the women who needed this clothing line to succeed. When she stepped off the elevator, she was surprised to find Blake waiting for her, a cup of coffee in hand. "Black with 1 sugar," he said, offering it to her. "Your assistant told me how you like it." Kendall accepted the cup cautiously. "Thank you. I wasn't sure you'd come back," Blake admitted. "I almost didn't," she said honestly. "But this project is bigger than either of us." Blake nodded. "I agree. That's why I've made some changes." He led her down the hallway, past curious employees who quickly pretended not to be staring. When they reached the main design studio, Kendall stopped in shock. The space had been transformed. The walls, once covered with images of rail-thin models, now displayed photographs of women of all sizes, shapes, and colors. In the center of the room was a large mood board titled "Say That Again," the same phrase from her Instagram post 2 years ago. "What is this?" she asked, turning to Blake. "Your campaign," he said simply. "If you want it." Kendall approached the mood board. It was filled with images of confident, full-figured Black women in fashion, entertainment, and business. At the center was a blank space with a question mark. "I don't understand," she said. "I want you to be the face of this line," Blake explained. "Not just the designer. You embody everything it stands for. Confidence, beauty that breaks the rules, joy that doesn't ask permission." Kendall shook her head. "I'm not a model, Blake." "No, you're more than that. You're the vision." He stepped closer. "But only if you want to be. I've already cleared it with the board. Full creative control, your name on the line, and a significant stake in the company." Kendall was speechless. This was beyond anything she had imagined when she agreed to consult on the project. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. Blake's expression was serious. "Because I meant what I said at that press conference. Every word." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, The rest of the world seemed to disappear. Then the spell was broken by the sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Vanessa stood in the doorway, her perfect features twisted in anger. She stalked into the room, looking Kendall up and down with obvious disdain. "So this is why you've been ignoring my calls? You're playing charity case with the help." Blake's expression hardened. "Vanessa, that's enough. This is a business meeting." "Business?" Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling it? You humiliate yourself at a press conference, declare your feelings for this," she gestured dismissively at Kendall, "and expect everyone to believe it's about business? You need to leave," Blake said firmly. "No, I think I'll stay," Vanessa said, turning to Kendall. "Did he tell you about our little arrangement? How we've been seeing each other on the side this whole time?" Kendall looked at Blake, who shook his head. "She's lying. Am I?" Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed Kendall a series of texts that appeared to be from Blake, dated just a few days ago. "He likes to keep his options open. Always has." Kendall's face remained impressively calm, but her eyes revealed her hurt. "I think you two need to talk privately," she said, turning to leave. "Kendall, wait," Blake called after her. "Those texts aren't real. I haven't been with Vanessa since before I met you." "It doesn't matter," Kendall said, her voice steady. "We're not together, Blake. You don't owe me any explanations about your personal life." As she walked out, Blake turned to Vanessa with fury in his eyes. "What the hell are you doing?" Vanessa smirked. "Saving you from yourself." What would people say if Blake Carrington, the king of high fashion, suddenly started slumming it with some plus-size nobody? "Don't you dare talk about her like that," Blake growled. "Why not? You did." Vanessa stepped closer. "Remember? Curvy black women? Not my type." "Those were your words, Blake. Nothing's changed except you got caught, and now you're overcompensating." Blake shook his head. "You're wrong. Everything's changed. I've changed." "Please," Vanessa scoffed. "Men like you don't change. You just get better at pretending." Blake looked at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. The calculating eyes, the practiced pout, the beauty that was all surface and no substance. "I feel sorry for you," he said quietly, "because you'll never understand what real beauty is." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," she warned before storming out. Blake immediately tried calling Kendall, but she didn't answer. He texted her. "Those messages weren't real. Please let me explain." No response. By the end of the day, Blake was frantic. He drove to Kendall's apartment, but she wasn't home. He called her assistant, who reluctantly told him that Kendall had gone to her mother's house and asked not to be disturbed. Desperate, Blake found Diana James' address and drove there through the evening traffic. When he arrived at the modest but elegant home in a quiet neighborhood, he sat in his car for several minutes, gathering his courage. Finally, he approached the door and knocked. Diana James answered, her expression neutral as she assessed the billionaire on her doorstep. "Mrs. James," Blake said. I know who you are, Mr. Carrington," she interrupted. "Your face has been all over my daughter's TV for the past week. Is Kendall here? I need to speak with her." Diana crossed her arms. "She doesn't want to see you." "Please," Blake said, his usual confidence gone. "There's been a misunderstanding." Vanessa fabricated those messages. Diana studied him for a moment. "Come in," she finally said. "But I make no promises." Blake followed her into a warm living room filled with books and family photos. Diana gestured for him to sit. "Kendall isn't here," she admitted. "She's at a hotel downtown. She needed space to think." Blake's shoulders slumped. "I've ruined everything, haven't I?" "That depends," Diana said, sitting across from him. "What exactly are your intentions with my daughter?" The question caught Blake off guard. I care about her." "Care?" Diana raised an eyebrow. "That's a very safe word, Mr. Carrington." Blake ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to call it. I've never felt this way before. Kendall makes me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about what I want, about what beauty even is." "And that scares you?" "Yes," he admitted, "but not for the reasons you might think. I'm not scared of what people will say. I'm scared that I'll hurt her, that I don't deserve her." Diana's expression softened slightly. "At least that's honest." "I meant what I said at that press conference," Blake continued. "I didn't know how to love a woman like Kendall, because I never believed I was worthy of one. She's so complete, so sure of herself. I've spent my life surrounding myself with women who were decorations, not partners. Women who needed my validation to feel beautiful. And Kendall doesn't need that from you, Diana finished for him. Exactly, Blake said. She already knows her worth. And that makes me want to be worthy of her. Diana was quiet for a moment, considering his words. My daughter has spent her entire life in a world that tells women who look like her that they aren't desirable, she finally said. That they should be grateful for any attention, even if it's hidden away from the public eye. Do you understand what I'm saying? Blake nodded slowly. You're asking if I'm ashamed of my feelings for her. Are you? No, Blake said without hesitation. I've never been more proud of anything in my life than the way I feel about Kendall. Diana smiled for the first time. Then prove it to her, not to me. How? She won't talk to me. Diana stood up. My daughter is strong, but she's also been hurt before. By men who desired her in private, but wouldn't acknowledge her in public. If you're serious about her, you need to show her that your actions match your words. As Blake drove back to his penthouse, Diana's words echoed in his mind. He needed to show Kendall that his feelings were real, not just a reaction to being caught saying something offensive. But how? The answer came to him as he passed a billboard for Nouveau Mode featuring one of his typical model campaigns. A thin, white woman looking aloof and untouchable. By the time he reached home, Blake had a plan. The next morning, he called an emergency meeting with his design and marketing teams. I want to scrap our current campaign, he announced. All of it. The billboards, the magazine spreads, the social media ads. Everything. His marketing director looked horrified. Blake, we've already spent millions on this campaign. And we'll spend millions more on the new one, Blake said firmly. I want a new concept centered around the phrase, say that again. It will feature women of all sizes, shapes, and colors celebrating their beauty unapologetically. But our core customers, someone began, will either evolve with us or find another brand. Blake interrupted. Nouveau Mode is changing. I'm changing. For the next week, Blake threw himself into the new campaign. He personally selected models of all sizes, with a focus on featuring dark-skinned black women who had been particularly excluded from luxury fashion. He insisted on no photoshopping of bodies. Every roll, stretch mark, and curve would be celebrated, not erased. Through it all, Kendall remained silent. Blake sent her daily updates on the project, hoping to entice her back, but received no response. Then, as the campaign was about to launch, disaster struck. Someone leaked an old photo of Blake with a group of models at a yacht party, alongside his infamous quote about black women. The caption read, "The real Blake Carrington. Don't be fooled by his sudden wokeness. He's only using this new body-positive push to stay relevant." The source was unnamed, but Blake suspected Vanessa. The timing was too perfect. Social media erupted. Critics called Blake's new campaign performative and insincere. Some models threatened to pull out. And worst of all, Kendall was being dragged into it, called a prop and a diversity hire who was being used to rehabilitate Blake's image. Blake was in crisis mode when his assistant burst into his office. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him her tablet, open to Kendall's Instagram account. There was a new post, a photo of Kendall looking directly at the camera with fierce determination. The caption read, "Say that again. A celebration of curvy black women reclaiming the narrative in fashion." Coming soon. It wasn't a Nouveau Mode campaign. It was Kendall's own project. Blake felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. She was launching her own line without him. He had lost her. Just as he was absorbing this blow, his phone rang. It was Kendall. "I saw the leak," she said without preamble. "Are you okay?" Blake was stunned by the concern in her voice. "You're asking if I'm okay? After everything. Despite what you might think, I don't enjoy seeing people suffer," Kendall said. "Even billionaires who say stupid things." Despite everything, Blake laughed. "I've said and done a lot of stupid things, Kendall. But caring about you isn't one of them." There was a pause. "I saw what you're doing with the new campaign," she finally said. "Using real women. No photoshopping. It's impressive." "I'm trying to learn," Blake said. "To do better." Another pause. "That's why I called. I'm launching my own project. Say that again. It's a series featuring curvy black women in fashion telling their stories. I saw your post, Blake admitted. It looks amazing. I want to feature your new campaign as part of it, Kendall said, surprising him, as an example of a major brand making real change. Blake was speechless for a moment. You still believe I can change? I believe you're trying, Kendall said carefully. And that matters. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. When can we meet to discuss it? Tomorrow, Kendall said. At my studio, not Nuva mode. This needs to be on neutral ground. After they hung up, Blake felt hope for the first time in weeks. He still had a chance to prove himself to Kendall. The next day, Blake arrived at Kendall's studio, a converted loft in an artsy neighborhood far from the glossy corporate towers of downtown. The space was warm and inviting, filled with colorful fabrics and design sketches. Kendall was working with a photographer, styling a gorgeous plus-size model in a stunning red gown. She looked up when Blake entered, and for a brief moment, her professional mask slipped, revealing a flash of something softer in her eyes. Mr. Carrington, she said, her voice formal. Thank you for coming. Blake, he corrected gently. Please. She nodded slightly. Let me finish up here, and then we can talk. Blake watched as Kendall worked, amazed by her eye for detail and the easy rapport she had with the model. There was none of the cold efficiency of his usual photo shoots. This felt like a celebration. When they finally sat down to talk, Kendall showed him her vision for the Say That Again project, a multi-platform series featuring women telling their stories of being excluded from fashion and beauty standards, alongside examples of brands and designers who were changing the narrative. I want to include Nouveau Mode, she explained. Not as a redemption story for you personally, but as an example of how even the most exclusive brands can evolve. I don't deserve that kind of grace, Blake said honestly. Kendall looked at him directly. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about creating change in an industry that has hurt too many women for too long. Her selflessness humbled him. Even after everything, she was focused on the bigger picture, not personal grudges. What about those texts for Vanessa? He asked. You never let me explain. Kendall sighed. I know they weren't real. You do. Vanessa's not as clever as she thinks. The timestamps didn't match up with your public appearances that day. Kendall shrugged. I checked. Blake felt a surge of hope. So you cared enough to check? A small smile played at the corners of Kendall's mouth. Don't read too much into it. I just don't like being lied to. For what it's worth, Vanessa and I have been over for months, Blake said. Before I ever met you. Kendall nodded, accepting this. Why did you date her? Women like that. The question caught Blake off guard with its directness. Because they were easy, he admitted after a moment. Not sexually, although that too, but emotionally. They wanted what I could give them: money, status, connections. They never challenged me to be better. And I do, Kendall asked quietly. From the moment you walked into my office, Blake confirmed. You terrify me, Kendall James. I terrify you? She looked genuinely surprised. You're a billionaire CEO, and you're a woman who knows her worth without needing anyone else to validate it, Blake said. Do you know how rare that is? How powerful? Kendall's expression softened. Is that why you said those things at the press conference? Because I terrify you? Blake shook his head. I said them because they're true. Meeting you changed everything for me. You showed me what real beauty is, not just physical beauty, but the beauty of authenticity, of owning who you are without apology. He leaned forward. When I said I didn't know how to love a woman like you, because I never believed I was worthy of one, I meant it. I still don't know if I'm worthy of you, Kendall, but I want to try to be. Kendall was quiet for a long moment. Blake, she finally said, I need to know something, and I need you to be completely honest. Anything. She took a deep breath. Do you want me? Or do you just want to prove you've evolved? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Blake understood what she was really asking. Was his attraction to her genuine, or was he fetishizing her as some kind of diversity experiment? Blake reached across the table and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. Kendall James, he said, his voice low and intense. I have never wanted anyone the way I want you. It scares me how much I want you, not because of what you represent, but because of who you are. Your mind, your heart, your courage, and yes, your body too. All of you. Tears glistened in Kendall's eyes. I've never been someone's first choice before, she whispered. Just someone's secret. You're not my first choice, Blake said, squeezing her hand. You're my only choice. And I'll spend every day proving that to you, if you'll let me. Kendall wiped away a tear that had escaped. I'm still not sure I trust this. Trust you? I understand, Blake said. I haven't earned your trust yet, but I'd like the chance to try. She studied him for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. Okay, she said simply. Okay. Kendall nodded. You could try to earn my trust. But Blake, her voice grew serious. If this is some game or PR stunt, if you hurt me. I won't, he promised. And it's not. As they finalized the details of their collaboration, the air between them had changed. The professional distance was still there, but underneath, it was something new, a tentative bridge being built between two worlds that had seemed impossibly far apart. When Blake left Kendall's studio that evening, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. He didn't know what the future held for them, but for the first time in his life, he was pursuing something real, not just a beautiful image, but a beautiful truth. What he didn't know was that Vanessa wasn't done with her revenge. As he drove home, she was meeting with a tabloid reporter, armed with more damaging stories about Blake's past that could destroy everything he was building with Kendall. The storm was coming, and neither Blake nor Kendall was prepared for how it would test their fragile new beginning. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Kendall's studio as she reviewed the photos from yesterday's shoot. Her Say That Again campaign was taking shape beautifully, featuring women of all sizes celebrating their bodies without apology. Her phone rang, Blake calling for the third time that morning. Yes, she answered, trying to sound professional despite the flutter in her stomach. Have you seen the news? Blake asked, his voice tight with concern. Kendall frowned. No, I've been working since dawn. What's happening? Turn on any fashion news channel. Now, something in his tone made Kendall reach for the remote. She switched on the TV mounted on her studio wall and gasped. Vanessa Miller was on screen, tears streaming perfectly down her face as she spoke to a reporter. The headline below read, Exclusive, Blake Carrington's EX reveals his pattern of racism and body shaming. He would make the most horrible comments about women, Vanessa was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Especially black women with curves. That leaked recording wasn't just one bad moment. It was how he talked all the time. The reporter nodded sympathetically. And you're saying his new inclusive campaign is just for show? Absolutely, Vanessa insisted. Blake doesn't care about these women. He told me himself that this whole thing with Kendall James is just a PR stunt to save his company. He's using her. Kendall felt the blood drain from her face. Blake, none of it's true, Blake said quickly. You know that, right? I would never say those things, especially not to Vanessa. Kendall wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. She had only known Blake for a few weeks. What if her mother was wrong? What if he really was just using her to rehabilitate his image? Kendall, are you still there? I'm here, she said quietly. What are you going to do? Fight back, Blake said firmly. I've already called my lawyers. We're filing a defamation suit against Vanessa and the network. That could take months, Kendall pointed out. The damage will be done by then. I know, Blake sounded tired, but I have to do something. This isn't just about me anymore. She's dragging you into it too. Kendall's other line beeped. I need to take this. It's my publicist. For the next hour, Kendall fielded calls from reporters, brands she worked with, and models in her campaign, all wanting to know if she was aware of Blake's true nature. By noon, her head was pounding, and she felt physically ill. Her studio door opened, and her assistant poked her head in. Kendall, there's someone here to see you. Before Kendall could ask who, Vanessa strode into the room, looking immaculate in a designer outfit that probably cost more than Kendall's monthly rent. Hello, Kendall, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thought we should talk, woman to woman. Kendall stood, crossing her arms defensively. I have nothing to say to you. That's a shame, Vanessa said, examining her manicure. Because I have so much to say to you. Like how Blake laughs about this whole campaign behind your back. How he told me you were just a phase, his charity case. Get out, Kendall said, her voice shaking with anger. Vanessa stepped closer. You actually believe he's attracted to you? To this. She gestured dismissively at Kendall's body. Please. Men like Blake don't change their tastes overnight. He's using you. If that's true, why are you here? Kendall asked, suddenly realizing something. If Blake is still yours, why do you care about me? Vanessa's perfect smile faltered. You're scared, Kendall continued, gaining confidence. You see how he looks at me, and it terrifies you because he never looked at you that way. Don't flatter yourself, Vanessa snapped, her composure cracking. Blake needs arm candy who fits his image. Once this diversity phase passes, he'll come back to what he knows. What he really wants. Kendall shook her head. I don't think you know what Blake wants anymore. Maybe you never did. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. I'm trying to do you a favor. When Blake is done with his little experiment, you'll be yesterday's news. And everyone will remember you as the fool who fell for his act. I'll take my chances, Kendall said calmly. Now please leave before I call security. After Vanessa stormed out, Kendall sank into her chair, trembling. Despite her brave words, doubt gnawed at her. What if Vanessa was right? What if Blake was just using her? Her phone rang again, her mother this time. Baby, are you watching the news? Diana asked without preamble. I saw it, Kendall confirmed. And Vanessa just paid me a visit. Diana sighed. That woman is poison. What did she want? To warn me that Blake is using me. That I'm just his charity case. Kendall's voice broke on the last words. And you're letting her get to you, Diana said. Not a question, but a statement. How can I not? Mom, what if she's right? What if this is all just a game to Blake? Kendall James, Diana said firmly. You are a grown woman with a good head on your shoulders. You've spent time with Blake. You've looked him in the eyes. What does your heart tell you? Kendall closed her eyes, remembering the intensity in Blake's gaze when he told her he wanted her. The vulnerability when he admitted she terrified him. The way his hands shook slightly when he touched hers. That he's telling the truth, she finally admitted. That he's really trying to change. Then trust that, Diana advised. And remember, even if the worst happened and he did hurt you, you would survive it. You've survived worse. After hanging up, Kendall made a decision. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day, she told her assistant. I need to see someone. Across town, Blake was in crisis mode at Nouveau Mode headquarters. His PR team was drafting statements. His lawyers were preparing the lawsuit against Vanessa. And his phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from concerned board members and investors. Our stock is down 15% already, his CFO reported grimly. If this continues, we'll have to consider delaying the launch of the new line. That's not an option, Blake said firmly. The Say That Again campaign launches next week as planned. Blake, be reasonable, his marketing director urged. Vanessa's interview is everywhere. We need to distance ourselves from this controversy, not dive deeper into it. And how do we do that? Blake demanded. By abandoning the inclusive line? By firing Kendall? That would only prove Vanessa right. Maybe not firing her, someone suggested. Just putting the project on hold until this blows over. Blake slammed his hand on the table. No, this line matters. Kendall matters. I won't sacrifice either because of Vanessa's lies. The room fell silent. Then his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Carrington, Kendall James is here to see you. Blake's heart raced as he excused himself from the meeting. When he opened his office door, Kendall was standing there, looking more beautiful than ever in a simple yellow dress that hugged her curves. Kendall, he said, relief washing over him. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me after your ex tried to destroy both our reputations on national television. Kendall finished with a small smile. It's been an interesting morning. Blake ushered her into his office, closing the door behind them. I'm so sorry you've been dragged into this. None of it's true, Kendall. I swear. I know, she said simply. Blake blinked in surprise. You do. Vanessa came to see me, Kendall explained. She tried to convince me you were using me as a charity case. Blake's face darkened with anger. I'll kill her. No need, Kendall said, stepping closer to him. She actually did us a favor. How do you figure that? Because seeing her so desperate to come between us made me realize something. Kendall took a deep breath. She wouldn't be trying so hard if there wasn't something real here to destroy. Blake's heart pounded as she moved even closer. Is there something real here, Blake? Kendall asked softly. Without hesitation, Blake pulled her into his arms and kissed her. The moment their lips met, everything else faded away. The scandal, the company, the past. There was only Kendall, soft and warm in his arms, kissing him back with equal passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Blake rested his forehead against hers. Does that answer your question? Kendall laughed softly. It's a start. Blake led her to the couch in his office, keeping her hand in his. So what do we do now? About Vanessa, about the campaign, about us. First, Kendall said, her expression turning serious. We need to be clear about what us means. Blake, I've been someone's secret before. Someone's experiment. I won't do that again. I don't want you to be my secret, Blake said firmly. I want the whole world to know how I feel about you. And how is that exactly? Kendall challenged. Blake cupped her face gently. I'm falling in love with you, Kendall James. I've never said that to anyone before and meant it. But I mean it now, with every part of me. Tears shimmered in Kendall's eyes. I'm falling for you too, she admitted. And it terrifies me. Why? Because I've never been loved openly before, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Not by someone like you. I've always been the woman men desire in private, but won't acknowledge in public. Blake's heart ached at her words. I will never hide how I feel about you, he promised. In fact, he stood suddenly, pulling Kendall to her feet. What are you doing? She asked, confused. Making a statement, Blake said, leading her toward the door. Come with me. He guided her through the office to the main design floor, where dozens of employees were working. Conversations died as they noticed Blake and Kendall holding hands. Blake cleared his throat. Everyone, I have an announcement to make. The room fell completely silent. By now, you've all seen Vanessa Miller's interview. I want to be clear that everything she said is a lie. This company is changing because it needs to change. Because I need to change. And Kendall James isn't just helping us with this new direction. She's the inspiration for it. He looked at Kendall, his eyes filled with emotion. I'm in love with this woman. Not because it's good PR or because it's trendy, but because she's the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Kendall's eyes widened in shock at his public declaration. Then, to Blake's surprise, she reached up and pulled him down for a kiss right there in front of everyone. Applause broke out across the design floor. When they separated, both were laughing, slightly embarrassed but happy. Well, Kendall said, that's one way to make a statement. By that evening, Blake and Kendall's kiss had replaced Vanessa's interview as the top fashion news story. Photos of them leaving Nouveau Mode together, hand in hand, flooded social media with the hashtag, say that again, taking on new meaning as people celebrated what appeared to be a genuine love story. This is crazy, Kendall said as they sat in Blake's penthouse, watching the coverage. They're calling us fashion's new power couple. Blake grinned. Is that so terrible? It's just fast, Kendall admitted. A month ago, you were the man who said curvy black women weren't your type. Now we're a power couple? It's a lot to process. Blake's expression turned serious. Too much. Too fast. Kendall thought for a moment, then shook her head. No, just surprising. I never expected any of this. Neither did I, Blake admitted. But now I can't imagine my life without you in it. He hesitated, then added, there's something I want to show you. Blake disappeared into his home office and returned with a sketchbook. I've never shown anyone this, he said, handing it to her. I'm not a designer. But after I met you, I couldn't stop thinking about clothes that would celebrate your body, not hide it. Kendall opened the book and gasped. Inside were dozens of sketches, beautiful, flowing dresses and elegant business wear, all designed for a body like hers. They weren't professional quality, but they showed real thought and care. Blake, she whispered, turning the pages. When did you do these? Late at night, when I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about you. He looked embarrassed. They're not good, but they're beautiful. Kendall interrupted, tears in her eyes. Not because they're technically perfect, but because you saw me. You really saw me. She turned to the last page and found a note. If I was wrong about you, I was probably wrong about everything else I called love. Kendall closed the book and held it to her chest. No one has ever seen me the way you do. Blake took her hand. I want to keep seeing you. All of you, if you'll let me. They spent the night talking, planning the campaign, and sharing their histories. Blake told Kendall about growing up poor in Oakland, how he'd reinvented himself to fit into the fashion world, burying his past and his true self in the process. Kendall shared her struggles in the fashion industry, the rejections based on her size and color, and how she'd fought to create her own space. As dawn broke over the city, they fell asleep in each other's arms, more connected than either had ever been with another person. The next few days were a whirlwind. Blake and Kendall worked together to finalize this Say That Again campaign, which had evolved into a celebration of women reclaiming their narratives. They decided to address Vanessa's accusations head-on by incorporating their own love story into the campaign, showing how Blake's journey from ignorance to understanding mirrored societies need to expand its definition of beauty. But as the launch date approached, Vanessa made one last desperate attempt to destroy them. 3 days before the campaign was set to debut, Blake received a call from his lawyer. "Blake, we have a problem," he said gravely. "Vanessa is threatening to release private photos and videos from when you were dating. She claims they show you mocking plus-size women and making racist comments." Blake felt sick. "That's impossible. I never did anything like that around her. She says she has proof, and she wants $5 million to keep it quiet." "It's blackmail," Blake said, anger replacing his initial fear. "And I don't believe she is anything real. Even if it's fake, doctored videos can be very convincing," his lawyer warned. "It could take months to prove they're not authentic." Blake hung up and immediately called Kendall, explaining the situation. "Do you think she really has something?" Kendall asked, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "No," Blake said firmly, "but she could create something. Technology makes that possible now. So what do we do?" Blake took a deep breath. "I need to know if you trust me, Kendall. Really trust me." "I do," she said without hesitation, surprising herself with how true it was. "Then I think we call her bluff," Blake said. "We don't pay, we don't negotiate. We move forward with the campaign as planned. And if she releases something, then we fight it together," Blake said. "I won't hide from false accusations, and I won't let her control our lives with threats." Kendall was quiet for a moment. "Okay, let's do it." They informed their legal team of the decision. The next day, Blake received another call. Vanessa was making good on her threat. A video had been sent to several fashion blogs showing what appeared to be Blake laughing at photos of plus-size models and making derogatory comments. The video was grainy and the audio distorted, but it was clearly meant to be Blake. Before it could spread far, Blake and Kendall called an emergency press conference. Standing side by side before a room full of reporters, Blake spoke first. "By now, some of you may have seen a video circulating that appears to show me mocking plus-size women. I want to be absolutely clear. That video is a fake. It has been doctored to damage my reputation and hurt the Say That Again campaign." He reached for Kendall's hand. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes in the past, and I've owned them publicly. But I have never been the man in that video, and I never will be." Kendall stepped forward. "I believe Blake," she said firmly. "Not blindly and not without evidence. I believe him because I've seen his heart, his growth, and his commitment to change. This Say That Again campaign is not just about fashion. It's about allowing people the space to evolve, to become better." A reporter raised her hand. "Ms. James, how can you be sure the video is fake?" "Because I've dated men like the one in that video before," Kendall said honestly. "Men who fetishize my body in private while mocking women like me in public. I know what that looks like. What Blake and I have is real, open, and honest." Another reporter called out, "Blake, are you prepared to file charges against Ms. Miller for fabricating evidence?" "We're exploring all legal options," Blake confirmed. "But right now, our focus is on launching this campaign and continuing the important conversation about beauty standards in the fashion industry." After the press conference, Blake and Kendall retreated to her studio, emotionally drained but united. "You were amazing out there," Blake said, pulling her into his arms. "So were you," Kendall replied, resting her head on his chest. "Do you think they believed us? Some did, some didn't. But we told the truth, and that's what matters." Kendall looked up at him. What if this affects the campaign? What if all this controversy hurts the message? Blake kissed her forehead. Then we'll find another way to spread it. Together. That night, they received unexpected support. Diana James called to tell them that she had reached out to her network of body positivity advocates and therapists who were publicly standing behind Blake and Kendall, calling the video an obvious fake. Even more surprising, several of Blake's ex-girlfriends came forward to say that while Blake had many flaws, they had never heard him make the kind of comments in the video. The tide of public opinion began to turn back in their favor. The day before the campaign launch, Blake received a call from an unexpected source, his board chairman. "Blake, the board has been monitoring this situation closely," he said. "We've called an emergency meeting for this afternoon." Blake's stomach dropped. "To discuss my removal as CEO?" "Actually, no," the chairman said, surprising him. "To discuss expanding the Say That Again campaign into a permanent division of Nouveau Mode, with its own dedicated budget and staff." Blake was speechless. "Your vision for the company's future has been unconventional," the chairman continued. "But the pre-orders for the new line have exceeded our projections by 300%. Whatever you and Ms. James are doing, it's working." After the call, Blake raced to Kendall's apartment to share the news. When she opened the door, he swept her into his arms, spinning her around. "Blake," she laughed. "What's going on?" He set her down, breathless with excitement. "The board wants to make Say That Again a permanent division of Nouveau Mode, with you as its director, if you want it." Kendall's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Blake confirmed. "They've seen the pre-order numbers. The line is going to be a huge success." Kendall shook her head in amazement. "This is really happening, isn't it? We're really changing things." "We are," Blake said, taking her hands in his. "And there's something else I want to ask you." "What?" Kendall asked, suddenly nervous at his serious tone. Blake took a deep breath. "The campaign launches tomorrow. After that, I'm taking some time off. I've booked a trip to Paris, Rome, and Tokyo to visit our international offices and introduce the new line personally." "That sounds wonderful," Kendall said, not understanding where he was going with this. "I want you to come with me," Blake said. "Not just as the designer of the line, but as the woman I love. I want to see the world with you, Kendall. I want to build a future with you." Tears filled Kendall's eyes. "Blake, you don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "I know it's fast. I know we're still new, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Kendall placed her hand on his cheek. "I need to think about it. This is all so much so quickly." Blake nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The night before the campaign launch, Kendall couldn't sleep. She sat on her balcony, looking out at the city lights, thinking about Blake's offer. Part of her was terrified. It was happening so fast, and her heart had been broken before. But another part of her had never felt more alive, more seen, more valued. Her phone rang, Diana calling. "Mom, it's late," Kendall answered. "Is everything okay?" "I could ask you the same thing," Diana replied. "I had a feeling you might be up, wrestling with a big decision." Kendall smiled. Her mother always seemed to know. "Blake asked me to go traveling with him after the launch, to build a future together." "And what did you say?" "That I needed to think about it." Diana was quiet for a moment. "You know, when your father first asked me to marry him, I said the same thing." "You did?" Kendall was surprised. Her parents had been deeply in love until her father's death 10 years ago. "I was scared," Diana admitted. "Terrified, actually. He was so different from anyone I'd ever dated. I was afraid it wouldn't last, that I'd get hurt." "What changed your mind?" "I realized something important," Diana said. "Fear of being hurt is not the same as doubt. I was afraid, but I didn't doubt him. I didn't doubt us. When I separated those two feelings, the answer became clear." Kendall considered her mother's words. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "But when I think about Blake, about us together, I don't have doubts. Not anymore." "Then you have your answer," Diana said softly. After hanging up, Kendall made a decision. She grabbed her sketchbook and began drawing furiously, inspiration flowing through her like never before. By morning, she had created a new design, a stunning gown that celebrated every curve of her body. It would be her answer to Blake. The day of the campaign launch arrived with perfect weather and enormous anticipation. Fashion blogs and news outlets surrounded the venue, a converted warehouse in the arts district that had been transformed into a celebration of diverse beauty. Blake stood backstage, adjusting his tie nervously. He hadn't seen Kendall since yesterday when he'd asked her to travel with him. She had texted that morning only to say she'd meet him at the event, giving no indication of her answer. 5 minutes, Mr. Carrington, an assistant, informed him. Blake nodded, scanning the crowded backstage area for Kendall. Models of all sizes, shapes, and colors were being prepped for the runway show that would accompany the campaign launch. The energy was electric, buzzing with the feeling that something historic was happening. Just as he was about to go look for her, the crowd parted, and Blake's breath caught in his throat. Kendall stood there in a gown he had never seen before, a flowing creation in deep red that hugged every curve of her body before cascading to the floor like liquid fire. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her smile outshone every light in the room. "Kendall," he whispered as she approached. "You look like your sketch," she finished for him. "I made it real." Blake recognized it then. One of the designs from his sketchbook, the one he had drawn late at night thinking of her. But she had improved it, made it perfect. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're beautiful." Kendall took his hands. "I have an answer for you." Blake's heart pounded. "And yes," she said simply. "Yes to Paris and Rome and Tokyo. Yes to building a future together. Yes to all of it." Blake pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, not caring who saw or what anyone thought. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you sure?" he asked, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I'm terrified," Kendall admitted, "but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." A production assistant interrupted them. "Mr. Carrington, Ms. James, we're ready for you." Hand in hand, they walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The venue was packed with fashion industry leaders, celebrities, and media. On the front row, Diana James sat proudly watching her daughter. Blake stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. Today marks a new beginning for Nouveau Mode and for fashion as a whole. The Say That Again campaign is more than just a clothing line. It's a movement to redefine beauty on our own terms." He looked at Kendall, standing radiant beside him. None of this would have been possible without the vision and courage of Kendall James, who walked into my office and changed everything. Not just for Nouveau Mode, but for me personally. Blake took a deep breath. "I built this company around the lie that beauty had to be controlled. Thin, quiet, white. But Kendall showed me what beauty really is: presence, power, joy that doesn't need permission." The crowd erupted in applause as Blake continued, his eyes never leaving Kendall's. "I didn't know how to love a woman like you because I never believed I was worthy of one. But every day, I'm trying to be worthy. And I promise I'll keep trying for the rest of my life." Tears streamed down Kendall's face as Blake finished his speech. Then it was her turn to address the crowd. "When I was a little girl," she began, her voice strong despite her tears, "I never saw anyone who looked like me in fashion magazines or on runways. I was told that my body, my skin, my hair, they weren't beautiful. They weren't worthy." She looked out at the audience, where women of all sizes and colors nodded in recognition of their shared experience. "Today we say that again, but this time we redefine what it means. We say that again, but this time we own the narrative. We say that again, but this time we decide what beauty looks like." The crowd rose to its feet in a standing ovation. As music began to play, models of all sizes took to the runway, showcasing the new line to enthusiastic cheers. Blake pulled Kendall close, whispering in her ear, "I love you." "Say that again," she whispered back with a smile. "I love you, Kendall James," Blake repeated. "Every day, every way, exactly as you are." The launch was a triumph beyond their wildest expectations. Fashion critics hailed it as revolutionary. Pre-orders flooded in. Social media exploded with women sharing their own "Say That Again" stories, reclaiming words that had been used to shame them. As the evening wound down, Blake and Kendall slipped away from the afterparty, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," Kendall said as they walked hand in hand to Blake's car. "We're just getting started," Blake replied, pulling her close. What they didn't see was Vanessa watching from across the street, her face twisted with rage and jealousy. The fake video had failed. The blackmail had failed. But she wasn't done yet. As Blake and Kendall drove away, Vanessa made a phone call to a tabloid reporter known for his ruthless tactics. "I have one more story about Blake Carrington," she said coldly. "And this one will destroy everything." The war wasn't over, and the final battle would test Blake and Kendall's love in ways they couldn't imagine. The morning after the successful launch of the Say That Again campaign, Blake woke up with Kendall in his arms, feeling happier than he'd ever been. The sunlight streamed through the windows of his penthouse, illuminating her sleeping face. "Good morning, beautiful," he whispered as her eyes fluttered open. Kendall smiled sleepily. "Good morning. Is it real? Did yesterday really happen?" "It did," Blake confirmed, kissing her forehead. "The campaign is a hit. The orders are pouring in. And you said yes to coming with me to Paris." Kendall stretched contentedly. "When do we leave?" 3 days, Blake said. "Just enough time to tie up loose ends here before we go." They spent the morning planning their trip over breakfast, both excited about this new chapter in their lives. The Say That Again campaign had exceeded all expectations, with fashion blogs calling it revolutionary and the future of the industry. Blake's phone rang, his assistant calling with the morning's press updates. "Everything's positive," she reported. "The line is trending on all social platforms. Celebrities are requesting pieces. And the videos of your speech and Kendall's have gone viral. Any word from Vanessa?" Blake asked, still concerned about her final threat. "Nothing," his assistant confirmed. "She seems to have gone quiet." After hanging up, Blake turned to Kendall. "Maybe she's finally given up." "I doubt it," Kendall said, her expression serious. "Women like Vanessa don't give up. They just get smarter about their attacks." As if on cue, Blake's phone rang again. This time, it was his lawyer. "Blake, turn on Channel 8 now," he said urgently. Blake grabbed the remote and switched on the television. A somber-looking news anchor was mid-sentence. Exclusive report on fashion mogul Blake Carrington's hidden past. The screen cut to a reporter standing outside a modest home in Oakland. "I'm here in East Oakland, where Blake Carrington, born Brandon Carter, grew up far from the glamorous world he now inhabits." According to former neighbors and classmates, young Brandon was known for his charm, his ambition, and his troubling attitudes toward women. Blake felt the blood drain from his face as the camera cut to an elderly man identified as his former high school teacher. Brandon always had issues with the black girls in class, the man claimed. He would make comments about their appearance, their hair, their bodies. It was disturbing even back then. "This is a lie," Blake said, his voice shaking. "That man was never my teacher." Kendall squeezed his hand as the report continued, showing yearbook photos of a younger Blake alongside interviews with supposed former classmates who claimed he had a history of racist and sexist behavior dating back to his teenage years. "I don't understand," Blake said, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "How do they find these people? How do they even know about Oakland?" The final blow came when the reporter revealed that an anonymous source had provided documentation showing that Blake had legally changed his name from Brandon Carter to Blake Carrington at age 22, reinventing himself and burying his troubled past. "Vanessa," Kendall realized. "She must have hired a private investigator to dig into your background." Blake sat down heavily, his mind racing. "I did change my name," he admitted, "from Brandon Carter to Blake Carrington, but not to hide anything sinister. I was just a poor kid from Oakland trying to break into a world that didn't want me. I thought a fancy name would open doors." "What about the rest?" Kendall asked gently. "The claims about your behavior toward black girls in school?" "Complete lies," Blake said firmly. "I dated all kinds of girls in high school. My first girlfriend was black, Tasha Williams. We were together for 2 years." As the report ended, Blake's phone exploded with calls from his PR team, board members, and concerned business partners. The campaign that had been celebrated just yesterday was now under scrutiny as people questioned whether Blake's transformation was real or if he had a lifetime pattern of problematic behavior. "What do we do?" Kendall asked as Blake silenced his ringing phone. Blake took a deep breath. "We fight back with the truth. All of it." Over the next hours, Blake made dozens of calls to old friend from Oakland, seeking anyone who could vouch for him. Kendall worked her own contacts in the fashion industry, asking them to stand by the campaign despite the new allegations. By afternoon, they had assembled a small group of Blake's former classmates and neighbors who were willing to speak on his behalf, including Tasha Williams, his high school girlfriend, now a successful doctor in Chicago. I'll fly them all in for a press conference tomorrow, Blake decided. People from my past who know the real me. Kendall nodded, but her expression was troubled. Blake, there's something else we need to discuss. What is it? Paris, she said simply. Our trip. With all this happening, maybe we should postpone it. Blake's heart sank. You're having second thoughts. Not about us, Kendall quickly assured him, but about the timing. Running away now might look like you're hiding from these accusations. As much as he hated to admit it, Blake knew she was right. So what do? We stay and fight, Kendall said firmly. Together. We clear your name, and then we go to Paris with nothing hanging over our heads. Blake pulled her into his arms. What did I do to deserve you? You listened, Kendall said simply. You changed. You opened your heart. That evening, Diana James arrived at Blake's penthouse with dinner for them both, concerned about her daughter after seeing the news. Mom, you didn't have to come, Kendall said, hugging her mother. Of course I did, Diana replied. When my daughter and the man she loves are being attacked, I show up. Blake was touched by Diana's immediate inclusion of him in her concern. Thank you, Mrs. James. Diana, she corrected him with a warm smile. We're family now. Over dinner, they discussed strategy for the press conference the next day. Diana, with her background in therapy and public speaking, offered valuable advice. Blake, you need to be completely transparent, she advised. Don't hide anything about your past, your name change, your humble beginnings, your journey to success. The more honest you are, the more people will trust you. Even if that means admitting I changed my name because I was ashamed of where I came from. Blake asked. Especially then, Diana said. That kind of vulnerability is powerful. It shows growth. As they talked, Blake's phone rang again. This time, it was a number he didn't recognize. Something told him to answer it. Blake Carrington, he said cautiously. Actually, it's Brandon Carter I'm looking for, a woman's voice replied. Blake tensed. Who is this? My name is Mariah Johnson. You probably don't remember me, but we went to Oakland High together. I remember you, Blake said, surprised. You were in my English class senior year. That's right, Mariah confirmed. I saw the news today. Those things they're saying about you, they're not true. And I think I know who's behind it. Blake put the phone on speaker so Kendall and Diana could hear. What do you mean? There's a woman who's been contacting people from Oakland High, offering money for dirt on you. When she approached me, I recorded the conversation. She specifically asked me to lie about you harassing black girls. Blake's heart raced. Was her name Vanessa? She didn't give a name, Mariah said. But she was model-thin, light-skinned, expensively dressed. Sound familiar? That's Vanessa, Kendall confirmed. I have the recording, Mariah continued. And I'm not the only one she approached. Several of us have been talking. We want to help you, Blake. Or Brandon. Whatever you want to be called. Tears filled Blake's eyes. Thank you, Mariah. You have no idea what this means to me. After getting Mariah's information and arranging for her to send the recording, Blake hung up, feeling hopeful for the first time since seeing the news report. We've got her, he said to Kendall. Vanessa's finally gone too far. The next morning, as they prepared for the press conference, Blake received another unexpected call from his father. Robert Carter was a hardworking man who had raised Blake alone after his mother died. They weren't estranged, but they weren't close either, with Blake visiting Oakland only a few times a year. Dad, Blake answered, surprised. Son, Robert's deep voice came through the phone. I saw the news. Those vultures are dragging your name through the mud. I'm handling it, Dad, Blake assured him. We're having a press conference today to set the record straight. I want to be there, Robert said firmly. My son is no racist. Never was, never will be. And I aim to tell them so myself. Blake was stunned. His father hated public speaking and avoided the spotlight. Dad, are you sure? The press can be brutal. I'm sure, Robert said without hesitation. It's time I stood up for my son the way he's always stood up for me. Blake was confused. What do you mean? You think I don't know why you send me those checks every month? Why my house is paid off? Why I have the best healthcare money can buy?" Robert's voice was gruff with emotion. "You change your name, son, but you never change your heart. You've always taken care of your old man, even when I wasn't the best father." Tears streamed down Blake's face. "Dad, I'll be there," Robert said simply. "Text me the address." After hanging up, Blake turned to find Kendall watching him with tears in her eyes. "You heard?" he asked. She nodded. "Your father sounds like a wonderful man." "He is," Blake agreed. "He worked 2 jobs to raise me after my mom died. He's the reason I succeeded, because he taught me to work hard and never give up." Kendall took his hand. "I can't wait to meet him." The press conference was scheduled for noon at Nouveau Mode headquarters. By 11, the lobby was packed with reporters, all eager to hear Blake's response to the allegations about his past. Backstage, Blake's supporters had gathered, Mariah, and several other former classmates from Oakland, Tasha Williams, who had flown in from Chicago, and most importantly, Robert Carter, looking uncomfortable but determined in a suit Blake suspected he had bought specially for the occasion. "Dad," Blake said, embracing his father. "Thank you for coming." Robert patted his son's back awkwardly. "Wouldn't be anywhere else." Blake introduced his father to Kendall, who greeted Robert with a warm hug. "So you're the woman who's got my son all twisted up," Robert said with a smile. "About time he found someone real." Kendall laughed. "I think so too, Mr. Carter. Call me Robert," he insisted. "We're family now." As noon approached, Blake gathered everyone together. "Thank you all for being here, for standing by me. I can never repay you for this." "You already have," Tasha said. "By becoming the man we always knew you could be." With that vote of confidence, Blake stepped onto the stage, facing the sea of cameras and reporters. Kendall stood beside him, holding his hand, while their supporters waited in the wings. "Thank you all for coming," Blake began. "I'm here to address the allegations about my past that aired yesterday. Some of what was reported is true. I did grow up in Oakland, and I did change my name from Brandon Carter to Blake Carrington when I was starting my career." He took a deep breath. "I changed my name because I was ashamed of my humble beginnings. Because I thought fashion executives wouldn't take seriously a poor kid from Oakland with a plain name. It's not something I'm proud of now, but it's the truth." Blake looked at his father in the wings, drawing strength from his presence. "What isn't true are the allegations about my behavior toward black women during my school years. These claims were fabricated by someone with a vendetta against me and my company." He gestured to Mariah, who stepped forward. "This is Mariah Johnson, my classmate from Oakland High. She has evidence that these witnesses were paid to lie about me." Mariah played the recording of her conversation with Vanessa, in which Vanessa clearly offered money for false stories about Blake harassing black girls in school. The room erupted in murmurs as reporters frantically took notes. Next, Tasha Williams stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Tasha Williams. Brandon, or Blake, and I dated for 2 years in high school. He was kind, respectful, and never once made me feel less than because of my race or appearance." One by one, Blake's former classmates shared similar stories, painting a picture of a hard-working, ambitious young man who had always treated everyone with respect. Finally, Robert Carter took the microphone. His hand shook slightly, but his voice was strong. "I'm Robert Carter, Brandon's father, or Blake, as he calls himself now. My son changed his name, but he never changed his heart. He's always been a good boy who respected women because that's how I raised him after his mama died." Robert looked directly at the cameras. "I'm not a rich man. I worked in a factory for 40 years. But I'm proud of my son, proud of what he's built, proud of the man he's become. And anyone who says different is lying." There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Robert stepped back. Blake embraced his father, both men overcome with emotion. When Blake returned to the microphone, his voice was steady. "I've made mistakes in my life. The worst was forgetting where I came from and who I really am. But thanks to Kendall James, I'm remembering." He reached for Kendall's hand, pulling her gently to his side. Kendall walked in my office and showed me that true beauty isn't about size or color or fitting some narrow ideal. It's about authenticity, about owning who you are without apology. Blake looked out at the crowd of reporters. The "Say That Again" campaign isn't just about fashion. It's about reclaiming our narratives. All of us, including me, Brandon Carter from Oakland, who became Blake Carrington because he was afraid the world wouldn't accept him as he was. He turned to Kendall. But this amazing woman has taught me that the only acceptance that matters is self-acceptance. And for the first time in my life, I fully accept who I am, all of me, past and present. The press conference ended with Blake opening the floor to questions. He answered each one honestly, without the polished PR responses he would have given in the past. When asked about Vanessa's motivation, he was gracious, saying only that hurt people, and that he wished her healing. As they left the stage, Blake's phone buzzed with a text from his lawyer. Police just arrested Vanessa Miller for attempted extortion based on the recording. She's facing serious charges. Blake showed the message to Kendall. "It's over," he said with relief. "Vanessa can't hurt us anymore." "She never could," Kendall replied, squeezing his hand. "Not really." That evening, Blake hosted a dinner at his penthouse for everyone who had supported him: his father, Kendall and Diana, his former classmates, and key members of the Nouveau Mode team who had stood by him. As they enjoyed the meal, reports came in that the Say That Again campaign was bouncing back stronger than ever, with orders doubling after the press conference. People were inspired by Blake's honesty about his past and his journey to acceptance. To new beginnings, Blake toasted, raising his glass. "And to remembering where we came from," Robert added. Later, after the guests had left, Blake found his father on the penthouse balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Quite a view," Robert commented as Blake joined him. "It is," Blake agreed. "But you know what? It doesn't move me the way it used to." "No," Blake shook his head. "I spent so many years chasing this lifestyle, these symbols of success. But now you found something real," Robert finished for him. "That woman of yours, she's special." "She is," Blake agreed, smiling as he thought of Kendall. "Dad, I've been thinking. What would you say to moving out here? There's a beautiful house near the bay with a garden you'd love. Close enough that we could see each other often, but you'd have your own space." Robert looked surprised. "You want an old man nearby?" "I do," Blake said sincerely. "I've missed too many years trying to be someone I'm not. I don't want to miss any more." Robert's eyes glistened with tears. "I'd like that, son. I really would." The next morning, Blake and Kendall met with their travel agent to reschedule their European trip. With the crisis resolved, they were ready to take the next step in their relationship. "Paris in 2 weeks," the agent confirmed. "Your suite at the Ritz is all arranged." As they left the agent's office, Blake pulled Kendall into a quiet corner. "Before we go, there's something I need to ask you." "What is it?" Kendall asked, concerned by his serious tone. Blake took a small velvet box from his pocket. "I know it's fast. I know we haven't been together long. But when you know, you know." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones. "This isn't about rushed passion or making a statement. It's about choosing you, Kendall James, every day for the rest of my life." Kendall's eyes filled with tears as Blake continued. "You walked in my office and changed everything. You showed me what beauty really is. You love me not despite my flaws, but as a whole person, past and present." He knelt down, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. "Kendall, will you marry me?" For a moment, Kendall was speechless. Then she pulled Blake to his feet. "Stand up," she said firmly. "If we're doing this, we're doing it as equals." Blake stood, his heart pounding as he waited for her answer. "Brandon Carter from Oakland," Kendall said with a smile, using his birth name deliberately. "I will marry you. Not because you're Blake Carrington the billionaire, but because you're a man who had the courage to change, to grow, to become more fully himself." She held out her hand, and Blake slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "There's just one condition," Kendall added. "Anything," Blake promised. "I want both your names on our marriage license. Brandon Blake Carter Carrington. All of you, past and present." Blake's eyes filled with tears. "You really do see me, don't you?" "All of me. Always," Kendall assured him. "And I love every part." 2 weeks later, they boarded a private jet for Paris. The Say That Again campaign had become a worldwide phenomenon, with women of all sizes and colors embracing its message of self-acceptance and authenticity. Nouveau Mode had transformed under their leadership, becoming a pioneer in inclusive fashion. The board had unanimously approved, making Kendall the permanent creative director of the Say That Again division, with plans to expand it into a full lifestyle brand. As the plane took off, Blake held Kendall's hand, the diamond on her finger catching the sunlight. "Happy?" he asked. "Beyond happy," she confirmed, "but also a little nervous." "About the wedding?" Kendall shook her head. "About having everything I ever wanted. It's scary when dreams come true." "I know what you mean," Blake admitted. "Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and reach for you, just to make sure you're real." "I'm real," Kendall assured him. "And I'm not going anywhere." Blake kissed her gently. "Say that again." Kendall smiled, understanding the deeper meaning behind those words that had brought them together. "I'm real," she repeated. "I'm yours. And our love is the most authentic thing in both our lives." As the plane carried them toward their future, Blake marveled at how far they had come. He from denial to acceptance, she from caution to trust. Together, they had found something neither had believed possible, a love that celebrated all of who they were, without apology or pretense. "Say That Again" had begun as a campaign slogan, a way to reclaim hurtful words. Now it was their promise to each other, to speak their truth, to honor their journey, and to love each other completely, past and present, for all the days to come. 3 months later, Blake and Kendall were married in a beautiful ceremony in Blake's, now Brandon's, hometown of Oakland. Diana walked her daughter down the aisle, and Robert stood proudly as his son's best man. The wedding was featured in fashion magazines worldwide, not for its luxury, but for its authenticity, a celebration of love that crossed boundaries of size, race, and background. In her vows, Kendall spoke words that would later become the tagline for their expanded Say That Again movement. True beauty isn't found in fitting someone else's mold. It's in breaking the mold entirely and standing confidently in your own unique shape. Brandon Blake Carter Carrington, as he now proudly called himself, responded with vows that brought tears to every eye. "You walked into my office and showed me what beauty really is, presence, power, joy that doesn't need permission. I didn't know how to love a woman like you because I never believed I was worthy of one. But every day with you, I become more worthy, more authentic, more real." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheers erupted from the gathered guests, a beautiful, diverse crowd that reflected the world they were helping to create, one where everyone's story deserved to be heard, where everyone's beauty deserved to be celebrated. And in that perfect moment, surrounded by love and acceptance, Brandon and Kendall knew they had found their truth, a love that saw all of them, past and present, and said with conviction, "This is beautiful. This is worthy. This is real." Say that again.